Hey guys, my name is Andy and I'm over in the Manchester area and I'm having trouble getting my laptop set up in a minute. Anyway, right, so I am also of course a poet and ambient musician under the name of Ocean in a Bottle. I also co-run what was previously Stretford's leading open mic literature night, Speakeasy, with now in Cholton. I also will do several podcast series called Spoken Label, Reading in Bed, Comedy Unity, and about 4 others. Sleep is optional. But I've also done a couple of poetry books, and I'll be touching on bits and pieces tonight on this. So, to start me off anyway, this is an old poem for some years ago, but this is my first poetry book, and it's about retired superheroes, and it's called Forgotten Hero. I haven't thought about flying for a long time. I haven't dreamed of that moment when I was alone above the clouds for a long time. I haven't dreamed of waking up surrounded in blue and green grass for more years than I care to remember. Not opened up the secret door at the back of my cupboard, nor have I reached for that magic button which will explode me into life. Instead, I sit here silent in the shadows, with a drop of melancholy and half-baked memories as friends. Instead, I sit here in the shadows like the ghost of Christmas past and beg you to listen to my story of the hero the world's forgotten. I was a hero which lived in a city which you'll know with a knowing smile if I whispered his name to you, but then was a haven of dark mazes and clattering criminals. Nowadays, I sit here with nervous nightmares as my days are a combination of a million sunsets cowboys have disappeared into. I watch the shores brush against the coast like harsh tragedies and feel the winds shake softly, which is trying to offer an escapement or return to former glories. I watch the world march on in new, different directions, with new buildings crumbling into dust and then rising from the ashes like a freshly born phoenix. But sometimes I wonder what the view would be like from the top. Sometimes. Okay. That's a very, very old poem, but I do like it. So, okay, moving straight on. Now, as I said before, I'm actually from the Manchester area. I grew up in an area called Stretford, which, if anybody knows around Stretford, that's basically heading into where Man United's ground is in that area. Now, some years ago, where I was a bit little more than a baby, right up there with B&Q was basically on the side of Talbot Road, there was a venue up there called the Hardrock Village. It's quite an interesting build of venue to research because some of the acts that played there in the early 70s. And I want to tell you about this today because this one's dedicated to my cousin actually, who died a couple of years ago unfortunately. And with the Hardrock Village, this cousin of ours used to tell us all about all the bands he's seen. So I've made it, swapped it around a little bit, but the narrative's correct. So this is Hardrock Village. When we were young, you used to sneak in frequently after mother and father were asleep, whispering to us who you'd just seen from Bowie on his alleged final tour, to Chuck Berry and his small band who had arrived on stage over an hour and a half late, only to get buckled off within 20 minutes of starting. Melanie, who sat on the edge of the stage, singing requests all night long until her voice eventually went. And the faces, who you laughed at for ages afterwards when their drummer fainted and fell on his arse halfway through their set. Each night you were there, fever-pitched with an electric ambience, stroked in slight sunlight, mirrored crowds queuing up the road to get inside, igniting your limitations of your own singing, with each chord busted out, each drumbeat slightly out of tune or context, burning cold glass over yesterday's memories. I should have said before on that one's from my third book, which is called The End of Autumn, as is this next poem actually. And the next one, certainly when I was a lot younger, and obviously I had hair as well, it isn't greying like it is nowadays. I used to do a lot of travelling, mostly up and down England really, and there's all kinds of poems and stories to tell you about that. But this one is when I went a bit further afield, and I spent 6 months in Brazil back in 1995, and I went travelling all over Brazil, from basically major cities like Sao Paulo and Rio de Janeiro. And there is a story, another one, don't worry, I'll tell you about another day, when I ended up getting chased out of Argentina with a gunship, but that's a story for another day. Now, on a serious note, okay, with Brazil, and this is why it's going back to what a lot of Tati's poems covered previously. There's an awful lot of basically poverty in this country nowadays. Certainly when I was in Brazil in '95, the situation was an awful lot worse than it is now here, and from what I've heard since, it's got worse over there since then. So this is a poem about our travelling days, and this is called Ghosts into Negatives, Dreams of Brazil, 1995. I still dream of their tiny star faces in Rio, huddled together in a frightened procession, underneath white plastic sheets of dirt-fled streets, and kicked wildly into the back of piss-stained vans. Bus journeys and hiding underneath seats when bullets laced the bus whenever it stopped for a few seconds longer than it shuddered in their own neighbourhood. Parties across the coastline of Sao Paulo, where I worked at a bar for 2 weeks, barely able to speak a word of Portuguese, and sleeping little more than 2 hours a night. I still dream of Brazil, losing myself in memories, splashing away in a white tinted ocean at midnight, over 20 years after I left the cenotals of poverty, tethered to trees, the endless beaches. Across autumn fields brushed in burnt grass, and sudden violence as sequence light, smearing the beauty into darkness, and the ghosts in the vans into negatives. Okay, moving on now. This next one's a bit more bawdier, and Anthony Briscoe, that's coming on after us, and I hope he's watching this, may appreciate this one, because this next piece is set in where he's originally from, actually, Blackpool. Now, this is, and the next poem after that, are 2 pieces I'm working on for my next book, actually, so it should be out probably next year. The book itself is going to be called Changing Carriages at Birmingham New Street, and it's a series of like poetic letters between a couple, which are imaginary, of course, and this is the first one, and they're all based, or most of them are anyway, told like through adventures in towns and cities they were in. So this is Unplanned Weekend in Blackpool. Do you remember, Sarah, those purple open windows in that hotel on Albert Road, and the beer-soaked train tickets tucked into that cup on the table, when you said you loved me for the first time? That sunset that lit up the clouds that made them look like on fire, and the rain on the pier just outside of the tower like bleared music caught between dusk and dawn. Modern trousseaus where you nearly got us thrown out before pleading with the guard 2 hours afterwards when we missed our train back to let sleep on the platform. She didn't. Do you remember, Sarah, the receptionist's face at that hotel when you put the waterworks on before sneaking me in afterwards, after he took pity out of you and let you stay for nothing? I can still see the look carried in his eyes as you smiled while winking at me to hurry up, like your head was on a stick, half buried in the light. I refused to say anything, even when you got there 10 minutes after me, proclaiming that was a lucky escape, repeating the poetry you just confused him with all the way to bed, shushing me to sleep all night long. Okay, right, the other one from the forthcoming book. There was a bit, I said before, a bit of music. I do like music actually. And this one is another music poem. It's completely different tone to Hardrock Village. This is in the voice of the characters. And this one's called Your Father's Records. It wasn't much to show, was it, Sarah? For a lifetime shopping. Just a few classic albums from your dad. The rest being sold off for beers when your mother stopped his beer tap, which your older sister dropped off in a box without stopping. I felt sorry for him. Do you remember me telling you, Sarah? Covered in fingerprints, clearly dragged off to the local record shop, placed back on the shelf there, when nobody clearly would touch them or deal with his abusive behaviour, making me recall the way he must have felt when he bought them originally, before he started cheating on your mum and started spending more and more money in the pub, ignoring all of you as you grew up and needed him, perched in his emotions when he put them back on a huff afterwards, almost like Al Green's Call Me, Come Back Home, or Simple Minders, Don't You Forget About Me, clearly skipping through his thoughts when he then died in his mistress's arms, saying almost, my memories are now yours. Right, okay, I'm going to do some pieces now. These next couple of pieces are all not from a book actually, they might end up one, who knows, in the future. But I've got a few bits and pieces out at the moment in publications of bits and pieces, and I'm going to read it out for you. I've got one that's actually forthcoming too. But anyway, the one this one's forthcoming, and it's another one that's forthcoming as well. It's there's a website knocking around at the moment called dyslexiapoetry.co.uk, run by a lovely lady called Helen Kay, and Helen actually knows I suffer from dyspraxia. Now, if you don't know what dyspraxia is, it's the more extreme version of dyslexia, where it affects your coordination as well as obviously like word numeracy and numeracy in general. Now, so basically my case is I'm tripping up and banging into things all the time, and I have word numeracy problems and spelling problems. So I wrote this one for Helen after she asked me about this. She wanted me to talk about what my life was like growing up with dyspraxia before I was registered with it. And I struggled with this one actually, and I got the piece right eventually, but what I ended up doing was my brother sent over to me a very interesting article that come up on the BBC website relatively recently, and I've mirrored the stanzas in between. So the first one's off the BBC article, talking about somebody else's life, then I've talked about my life, so it's like this double narrative in this one. And this poem's called Single Ticket to Dyspraxia. You broke down during your answer after a lifetime of not realising what it was, stating if there's something to fall over or something to break or something to burn myself on or cut myself, I would do it. I was 28, barely into my first year at university, and was wondering how I was going to cope with things not more difficult. You said you would not diagnose until 40, describing your brain like a filing cabinet, jammed in a drawer sometimes, and you cannot pull out the file you need. I was 29, postscripting my degree on a single ticket to nowhere, bobbing up for air every now and then, and you said I had a problem. You described your brain when they asked you how it impacted you throughout your childhood as a monkey-clouded signals whenever I'm trying to have sensible thoughts and always niggling in the background. Dyspraxia. You told me at 30 I had dyspraxia after tripping up on her front door, severing my past to the present, hidden emotions just underneath the edge of the page. Dyspraxia, I told myself in the dead of sunset on the bus heading home, placing myself in the flames of guilt, waking in the moonlight, celestial in emptiness. Okay, right, this next one's a bit more cheerful. I was thinking back to what Yvonne did before, and she read some beautiful pieces about what life's been like under COVID actually, and I did write quite a few pieces about that, but I've not been reading them recently because I think a lot of it is you're just trying to move on with your life really. And what I wanted to do was, I got asked again actually relatively recently by another lady actually called Amanda Beck McKim, could I write to do a poem for a charity book. Now Amanda's a lovely lady, she's an artist over in Cholton, and what she's done is she's asked people can they actually do some poems basically on some of their paintings, and sent over one to me when I did this poem a couple of months ago, and it was a great picture of children playing in the snow. Now obviously when I wrote this it was springtime and it was in the middle of summer now, but well. Anyway, so this one's in Amanda Beck McKim's book, it's just come out actually for charity, and it's called The COVID Life Book, and this poem is called Notes of Children Playing in the Snow. On the outskirts of the water park, across the tree-strewed yard, as soon as the sun was up, the children were out breakfast in mouths, steepling in freedom over the fields, their hands wide open in joy, beaten like drums for just a few minutes the deeper the snow got. Building snowmen flying down hills, uncensored in glimpses, ricocheting off each other's laughter, almost like nature had a plan in a slowly tipped ebb, crackling on the cold wind as sunlight is pulled behind a cloud, trying to offer hope in the middle of a pandemic before everything is forgotten and the world is turned inside out, speaking in the wind with unprincipled conditions to come, be free, be loud and be happy before the world returns to the darkness, maybe never to be seen again. Right, okay, I've just realised here actually, I'm a little bit ahead of myself, so, right, okay, I'm going to read out one I wasn't going to do originally, so, this one I've got dangling around in the publication with somebody else at the moment, and I can't really reveal much else at the minute about this, so, because I'm hoping this is going to be going in a book about homes that we've lived in, so, I got asked actually, and this is a submission like I said, and instead of writing places about places I've lived in, they knew I've already done a poem called Migration, which I'm not going to read tonight. But I got asked, could you write one about sort of places you nearly lived in? And that made me think actually, so this is that one, and this is called Open Ground. Leighton, you asked me to move in with you when I was 20, but I couldn't do it, saying it wasn't right for me. And we drifted apart when you told me you felt the same about Manchester. 29 I was when the landlord asked me when I looked at that bedsit 15 minutes from Greenwich Council, before the council then told me that the job was only temporary. I didn't end up taking it. Oh, the bedsit was all nice. 32 when I fell in love with Kent Town and spent a month on and off the sofa and your ex-boyfriends before giving up when I couldn't get a job there and stumbled back to Manchester, my relationship in pieces. Peeling regrets in my heart every time I nearly moved away and ended up returning back, barely able to look at myself inscribed in memories, ramifying inside me in rage of pent-up emotions, telling myself each time it's the best, casting an obituary of each segment of my life, wrestling in darkness with my sadness, leaving me facing the music every time I moved on. Building home after home after home, whether on the coastline or crushed on the London Underground, streaming down the sunset until I found my real home inside my heart, not inside a suitcase. Okay, I'm going to sing my last piece tonight now. A couple of you know, obviously, I've been running a very informal local writing workshop with my partner and a couple of our friends that come along recently. And Amanda, my partner, she's a really, really good flash fiction writer as well as novelist. And certainly prior to starting the workshop off in lockdown last year, I've never really been one for around trying to do flash fiction very much, but I've had to go with it the last 6 months or so, and I've quite got into it. So, and I've done some pieces, and this is one of them where I've categorised this as weird fiction. And this one's going to go to my friend Anne. I know, she's tuning in tonight, or she'd been messaging me before. So, Anne, this one's for you. And this is called Unicorn Rescue. When you heard help, you weren't sure for a few seconds where it's coming from. You first of all looked at the closed primary school, but you couldn't see anybody there. So you turned round and looked round in the local New Jersey and the church. But there was nothing. Not a soul. Did you hear that? You asked Michelle. I didn't hear anything, she said. You must be imagining things again. Help! You heard the voice again. Do you hear that? He said to her. Please tell me you heard that. Yeah, she answered. But where's it coming from? Come quick! Come quick! The voice called out again. Where? Chris called out. We can't see you. I'm stuck on top of the letterbox. We can't see you, Michelle responded. All we can see is a little toy unicorn in the letterbox. That's fucking me, the voice said. What? Chris and Michelle both looked at each other speechless. I am not fucking joking, the voice said. Mary dropped me on here Friday afternoon without realising there was chewing gum on it. Oh, you poor thing, Michelle went over to it. It couldn't move, despite frantically trying to pull itself off it. We're not alone, we're allowed to tell humans we're alive usually. But I starved to death as she helped me. Chris, Michelle looked at him. This is too surreal for me. How the fuck do you think I feel? He said in response. How do you think I feel about this? It's not exactly my idea of fun, having to ask for help from two random fleshbots. Fleshbots? Chris had lifted him up. There you go, mate. Cheers. The unicorn jumped in the air and whistled. 20 seconds later, 5 more unicorns arrived, carrying a bottle of wine, leaving both Chris and Michelle speechless. And that is where things started to really get weird. Right, guys, well, that's me done for the night now. Obviously, again, my name is Andy N. From the Manchester area. You can find me easy enough on Facebook. Just look for me, okay? Look for Andy N. All my books and bits and pieces you can find on Amazon, all the usual reputable book sales. The music, Ocean of Bockle, you can find that easily. I'm on Bandcamp, and the podcast, Spoken Label, Reading in Bed, and wherever else, are all on the news networks. So, been great fun tonight. As Don Callis says in Impact Wrestling, stay safe and stay over. I'll see you all next time.